Alright, here we go. Well, my name is Zach, and I'm going to do a simple Hello World tutorial today, basically using the class UILabel. Just figured I'd make it a little bit more simple than the regular iPhone example, which kind of gets into buttons and not a very good way to get started if you have no idea what you're doing with Xcode and whatnot. So let's get started by opening up Xcode down here. Let's cancel that out and just go up to File, New Project. And you'll notice there are two different categories, one for iPhone and one for Mac OS X. Obviously we're going to be on the iPhone today. And we'll do a Cocoa Touch application, which is for, obviously general applications and stuff. This would be more for like the lists and, like kind of like the address book, similar to that. But I'll show some more about that in later tutorials and stuff. Let's get started by doing a new project, and we will title this our first, well, let's just do a Hello World project. I'll save it to my desktop. I don't really care where you guys save it. And as you see, all your files will load in. And under here, under classes, you have your app_delegate.m, which is your main class. Your main, which is where the application will execute. But as you can see, the Xcode automatically writes it for you, and it goes into Hello World Project App Delegate, which is this class right over here. So you never really have to write your main, which is kind of nice. And always under here, the application did finish launching. That's kind of, I kind of look at it like it's your main, because that's where everything kind of initiates into the window and stuff. You would have to call other classes otherwise to show it in the window, which is all done here anyway. We'll get back to that in a second. And this is your deallocate function, kind of gets rid of the current classes and stuff out of RAM. But alright, let's get started by going into myview.m. Hopefully you guys have had some, programming experience before. If not, I'll try and explain this the best as I can as we go along. But the first thing we're going to want to do is create a function to display the label that we have. And I'm going to do a function called display label. Simple enough. It's always good to make functions that kind of are self-implied on what you're doing there. Now, a lot of different programming languages and whatnot, they show their functions. I know PHP, for example, you could do, function and then name of function, and then your parameters go in here, etc. However, in similar to other languages too, some languages you need to declare a type. Like this one, you'll need to declare a type. But in Xcode, in object-oriented C, you have to put the type in opening brackets and whatnot, the name, and then a colon for your parameters and stuff. So you do, parameter 1. Actually, do the type always first. So like parameter 1, parameter 2, etc. So it's a little different, but you get the hang of it after a while. Anyway, back to the function. You have your display label, and the first thing we are going to want to do, the way that the display label works is it calls a class called UILabel, and you're going to need to have coordinates for positioning. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with our coordinates. For example, we're going to have our left margin, top margin, the width of the label, and the height of the label. Now we'll come up here and we will make the left margin 0 because we're going to make the width of the label the full length of the iPhone, which is 320. I believe the iPhone is 320 by 480. So we'll have to go off of that. And then, so the left margin is pretty much saying, you know, how far from the left do you want your label displaying? And this is obviously how far from the top would you like your label displaying. We're going to put about, for example, we'll put about 40 for this one. And then for the height, I mean, how high do you want the label to be? So we'll make it about 40 as well. I mean, hopefully you guys can read this. I will use my little zoom in feature here to get that going. Hopefully you can see that through my recording software that I have. Here's the height of the label. Now if you don't have that down, go ahead and type that in. So this is going to be pretty important for later. Go ahead and pause. Hopefully you're done with that. And let's get started with creating a rectangle. Now how that works is you make your label and then you have to create a rectangle to place the label in, because the way that the iPhone works is you need to, you know, make certain frames for your stuff to show on the main page or whenever you're deciding to display it. So we can make a rectangle here. Sorry if that didn't make any sense. Hopefully it did. You'll get the hang of it after a while though. So what you're going to want to do is, these are all pre-built in, so you're going to call the instance of the CGRectMake class and we're going to make it frame. This can be anything that you want it to be. And then we're going to set the constructors, the initializing values, which are going to be k left margin, k top margin, which again we're declaring up here, so these are already set. I mean, you don't have to do it that way, but it's easier for me anyway. Kind of let you know the place of your numbers and everything, because if you were to put just any random number, you wouldn't exactly know how you were doing it. Like if you replaced all these with just random numbers, you wouldn't remember which one was the left margin, which one was the top, etc. So that kind of helps me keep in line for that. And I think we got the height. Yes, we did. Now, this is where we're going to call the class UILabel, and we are going to title this label, just to make it easy, simple. And now what we do is we are going to tell the computer to put the label into the screen view. So we're going to allocate this into RAM by doing UIAllocate, and we're going to initialize it with the current frame, which is what we made up here. Frame. So that puts it into the rectangle. And once we do that, all we have to do is assign the attributes, not the attributes, I'm sorry, the properties of the label. So for example, if we want the alignment to be in the center, they have already made a nice little class called UI Text Alignment Center, which centers the text obviously. And then whatever you want the text to be, which in this case, we want it to be Hello World. And then we give it the font properties, which in this case, UI Font is the class that declares the font properties of any specific text statement. And there's already as you can see here, it kind of fills in a little bit. Bold system font of size, in other words, make it bold. And